Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing another album review. I'm going to be looking at this record today, Radio City by Big Star. So this was a request by a user, Phil Gascoigne, so thank you very much for requesting this review. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this was Big Star's second album, released in 1974, so it followed their debut album from 1972, number one record. Following the release of that album, founding member Chris Bell left the band. He was quite a significant member of the band. He co-wrote I think nearly all of the songs with Alex Chilton. So he was very much shared lead vocal duties on many all of the songs. Very much an integral part of the band. He left primarily because he kind of felt a bit threatened by Chilton, who had was getting a lot of attention, Big Star. He was seen as the leader of the band, because Alex Chilton had a hit as a teenager in the late 60s, Big Star was kind of seen as Alex Chilton's band, so that kind of pissed Chris Bell off a little bit, so he left shortly after the release of the debut. So following Bell's departure, the band actually initially broke up outright, with bassist Andy Hummel and drummer Jody Stevens returning to college, and Alex Chilton continuing to write and rehearse some new tracks, but intended as solo tracks. Now three of these songs which he worked on in this period, with session musicians Danny Jones and Richard Roseborough, were actually used on this album. Those recordings appear on here. However, at some point towards the end of 1973, the band's record label coaxed the three remaining members into performing a one-off gig at a rock writers convention, and this gig was a huge success. They went down a storm, and the band really enjoyed performing live again. They decided to work on a new album together. So utilizing some of Chilton's own solo tracks that he'd be working on, as well as writing some more. A bit like the debut album, number one record, this album was a critical success. However, it was a huge resounding commercial flop. Now this was partly due to their record label Ardent Records suffering from financial hardship, meaning that the album was promoted and distributed very poorly, and the band kind of following the release of this kind of weren't really going anywhere commercially. They were still playing supporting slots for bands such as Badfinger, and even at the time struggling to get these supporting slots. At the time though, it was praised though by various music publications such as Billboard and Cashbox. However, that wasn't enough to secure any commercial breakthrough, and the band soon sort of splintered off after its release. However, in the intervening years, though, this has grown, and Big Star in general have kind of grown to be considered a classic band of the kind of power pop genre, with Rolling Stone magazine placing both this and also their debut number one album on their list of 500 greatest albums, and a publication Sound and Vision put this in their top 50 greatest albums list. So I will try to show you my vinyl copy of it here, and this is a reissue of it, and it's originals. I don't even think it was even originally released in the UK. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think I think a lot of people have this album in a kind of two for one kind of sort of situation, packaged with number one album. But this is just a reissue, but even these are getting a bit more tricky to find. So there's the cover, there's the back cover there, just with a photo of the band there on the back, and then there's no fancy packaging with this. It's just in a plain inner sleeve, and it's on this label here, Akrama Records, I believe that is there. And then there is the back of it there. The only thing with this pressing, I mean, it's a lovely press and lovely heavyweight vinyl, but it's just getting it back into this sleeve. The sleeve is very, very, very thick card, so it's nearly impossible to actually get it back in without kind of spending a fair bit of time trying to get it in. Right, there we go. So, yeah, I will just now go over each of the album songs in detail. I will score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. Okay, first track up is Ooh My Soul. Now, this is a really, really good opener for me. Starts with this very kind of clean sort of like guitar riff and this organ kind of playing over like a very kind of solid, very kind of like momentous kind of like groove. Great vocal line from Chilton, which kind of develops, I guess, like the track goes on. You know, it kind of adds a bit of it grows in like intensity, like as like the song like goes on, which kind of like keeps like the track interesting, takes you on like a bit of like a journey. This one, so very like melodic passages and just some great band playing. Like you can kind of tell that they're having a really great time, like sort of like recording like this song, and it kind of has this kind of rawness still to it as well. That, you know, it kind of sounds like it could all just sort of like fall apart like at like any minute. But I think it's just a great way to kick off like the album. All members really pulling their weight here. Maybe a little bit lengthy like as an opener. It is the longest track like on the album. I think it's well over 5.5 minutes. So maybe could have done with a little bit of trimming to make it maybe a more effective, more punchy opener. Just because a lot of like the other tracks in here are very short, very punchy kind of songs. This song kind of feels like a little bit like an outlier, possibly. But no, it's still a really great song. And yeah, for me, we're getting 9 out of 10. Second track up is Life is White. Now this is a more kind of angsty kind of song this here, with lines such as like, can't even bring myself to call, and I don't want to see you now cause I know what you lack and I can't go back to that. And it's kind of got this very kind of sort of like propulsive beat to it, very sort of like blaring harmonica kind of going on like throughout the track, and I mean it's really good. It's a good kind of second track like on the album. Maybe not a favourite of mine, maybe not one I would necessarily go to like in isolation, but still but still a really solid song. I just think maybe it's mixed slightly weirdly, and there's a kind of, the piano solo is a little bit messy like as well, but it's still a decent track though. So yeah, Life is White would get a 8 out of 10. Okay, next up is a Way Out West, which is a favourite of mine, like on the album. Very good very good melodic, very catchy song. This one here. This was actually written by the bassist Andy Hummel, and I think was one of his first songs that he'd actually wrote like for Big Star. And it's kind of concerned sort of like these kind of like these mixed emotions, like about like a girl who sort of sings like, she's a schemer and she makes me mad, but I love her through these lonely nights. And it's kind of but it's actually sung by the drummer Jody Stevens, who again, he's got a decent voice. I think it kind of suits this song really well, and it's just got a very kind of melancholic nature to it. Just kind of swings along nicely, this one here, and I think like if this is one of his first attempts like at songwriting, like it is a damn good song. So yeah, Way Out West, really good track, and we'll get a 9 out of 10. Okay, next up is called What's Going On. Now, this is a more subdued kind of song, very acoustic based, this one here, with like kind of like acoustic guitar doing a lot of like the heavy lifting, but then you've got some nice like electric guitar, sort of like overdub riffs and frills like on it like as well. Very melodic verse, this one here, sung very much from a kind of like outsider's like perspective. He sort of sings like, and I resent everyone. Ever since I was young, I'm starting to understand what's going on and how it is planned. I mean, it's maybe not quite as catchy as some of the others, or maybe quite as immediately likeable, I guess, but it's a good diversion like on the album, and it's definitely a song which has grown on me since I've been kind of listening to this album a lot, like in preparation for this review. So yeah, I would give that one a 8 out of 10 overall. Okay, next up, which closes off side one, is called You Get What You Deserve, which is a more kind of, I guess, slightly straight ahead kind of song, very jangle pop, very birdsy kind of feel to this one here. Again, a very kind of melancholic lyric in only the kind of best way that Big Star kind of do it, like sort of things like, try to understand what I'm going through, don't blame me don't blame me for what folks will do. For some of us, it's not a good time, but you've got to get used to it. You better resign yourself, he sings like on. I mean, it's another great example of just, really great songwriting, very great kind of, like just complete record, like, in terms of it's got great vocal harmonies on there, and just a very kind of memorable guitar riff, so kind of swirl like throughout the track. Just a really good song. So that one will get a 8 out of 10 from me. Okay, next up, which opens up to side 2, is called Mod Lang, and this one is a very kind of hard rocking song. It's probably the most meaty kind of song like on like the album. This is one of the tracks actually that Chilton recorded with like the different backing band of session musicians, and apparently like the kind of like so like the actual lineup of Big Star did try and re-record it, but they just couldn't quite capture the magic like off like this original recording, and you can very much see why. It just sounds incredible. This one, like all like the riffs just sound so full. It's a very kind of Rolling Stonesy kind of feel to this one, or kind of maybe like the Faces as well. Very kind of British kind of sort of like blues rock like sort of feel to it. I mean, it's I guess it's a bit light on lyrical content, and I guess where there are lyrics, they are quite basic. He sort of sings like on like one particular line, like all night long I was howling, I was a barking dog, he kind of like he sort of like exclaims, and it's a bit maybe basic lyrically, but musically it's just so momentous, and I think it's a great way to kick off like the second side of the album. Okay, That's Not For Me is a Back Off a Car. Now this, I think, is one of Big Star's most well-acclaimed numbers. It's certainly one which appears on all the kind of like compilations and like whatnot like that, like they've got. For me, it is a great song, but it's maybe just a bit Big Star by numbers a little bit. It's kind of got this, it's got a very good kind of flowing kind of suspense feel to it, where you get sort of guitar licks which kind of leave you hanging, and then it kind of flows. It's just got a real good like sort of feel to it. I think some great harmony vocals on it again. Very simple, like unlike direct lyrics as well. He sort of sings like, baby, I'm too afraid, I just don't know if it's okay, trying to get away from everything. So I mean, basic direct lyrics. He's not cloaking anything like in kind of like metaphors like anything. But it's a good song though, and very much a kind of sound which kind of I guess. I say it's Big Star by numbers. I think it's because when you hear a band do a kind of Big Star sounding song, I'm thinking specifically of like the likes of Teenage Fan Club. This is the kind of sound that they're kind of ripping off, or kind of sort of like being heavily inspired by. Like always ends up sounding a bit like Back of a Car. So for me though, a really good song though, still, and it would get a 8 out of 10. Okay, next up is maybe the most underrated song on the album for me. It's Daisy Glaze. Now this one, very much a song of kind of two halves this here. Kind of starts off very kind of like a spacey ballad, I would say. Very echoey, sort of like ethereal vocals, which I guess was still quite groundbreaking. Like it's a bit difficult to almost hear like what he's saying. It's almost like a kind of precursor to kind of like the shoegaze like kind of like genre and that. And then in this section you've kind of got like where you actually sort of kind of make out like the lyrics, like the narrator's kind of lying like in a stream and kind of just floating around like aimlessly. But then the kind of second half of the song is just a real burst of energy. It kind of the beat kind of picks up big time, where he's kind of describes being like on like a night out, like in like a bar, and I think he references doing some kind of drugs or something, and then kind of ends up going a bit too far, and then like the final lines are like, you're gonna die, you're gonna cease. And I think it's just that kind of like that contrast, and like the way the song builds, like, and like develops. It's just it is just really, really, really like well done, this. So yeah, Daisy Glaze for me will get a 10 out of 10. Okay, next track up is She's a Mover. Now this one is a more kind of stripped back and more kind of raw song, this one here, with a kind of, I guess, simple kind of blues feel to it. It's kind of lyrically a little bit like inconsequential, and this kind of like, yeah, this kind of pounding kind of blues riff on it. A little bit messy, like in like kind of like the mixing department. I think it kind of it makes the drumming sound a little bit like amateurish, and I think it's maybe as well because this was a track done with those session musicians, like, so like it's not actually Jody Stevens like playing drums like on like this track here. So it's maybe like the mix or something, but it's short enough. It's a good song. It's not one I would ever skip, but it's just, yeah, maybe teetering like on filler there for me. Okay, and then we reach probably for many people the album's kind of centerpiece and like the kind of like the standout song, you know, September Girls. And this one, for me, is one of my favourite songs of the 1970s. I think, like, when people sort of say Big Star, like, are, like, underrated or should have been a band with hits, you know, this is the song which should have been a massive hit, I think, you know. It's just got everything, like, what makes a perfect pop song, you know, from that kind of beautiful, charming, opening guitar riff, great kind of vocals, great kind of sort of, like, yearning kind of, like, lyrics on there, and just this, yeah, like, this excellent kind of, like, musicianship, like, throughout the song. I kind of think that if this song maybe had come out, even say 2 years later, like 1976 and 1977, I think it could have been a kind of big hit and really fitted in with the kind of like the new wave kind of stuff like off at the time. But as it was just a little bit too ahead like off its time. But it is a classic song for me. I would say slightly odd placing, like on the album sequence. So this kind of what's this? Like the third track from the end. It tends to be the kind of graveyard spot, like on like albums, you know, where they kind of just throw any filler on. But I guess it's almost a testament to how strong this album is. That, you know, that they kind of feel that, okay, we can actually put our best track, like sort of like towards the end, like off like side 2. But I think it actually works though, and I think it kind of feels it kind of makes the song feel like they've kind of, yeah, I've just kind of casually thrown it on there, like maybe like not sort of thought too much about it, which I quite like, you know, it shows a kind of sense of confidence, like, you know, which I do quite appreciate. So yeah, but September Girls for me, one of the very best songs like of the 70s, and yeah, an easy 10 out of 10. But then kind of following that, we then get a slightly weaker track, you know, it's kind of this song called Morpher 2, which is a very much the kind of counterpoint to that one, you know, this is a very stripped back, it's a kind of very sad kind of piano-based sort of song, you know. There's not much of a song there really. It's about a minute and a half, and it just feels a little bit inconsequential, like on the album. I mean, it's not bad. There's some good vocal harmonies like on there, like as well, which is a thumbs up. But yeah, it would get a 6 out of 10. It's not what I would ever play like in isolation, like off the album. I'm in love with a girl. Okay, and then we arrive at the closing track, I'm in Love with a Girl, which again keeps this kind of stripped back kind of feel to it. You know, it's kind of almost is like September Girls is this peak, and then the kind of these last 2 tracks are very much the kind of like the come down, you know, or like sort of like sort of like very kind of minimal kind of songs. And this one I think is just Alex Chilton solo, a very tender like acoustic ballad with a gorgeous melody on it, very simple lyrics, you know. He basically is just like I'm in love with a girl and how great it kind of feels and like that, but I think it's a great closer to the album. Really has a kind of beauty to it, a real sense of innocence, I think, and yeah, for me would get a 10 out of 10. Okay, so overall, Radio City by Big Star would get 84%. So I think this is a great album from a hugely influential yet underappreciated band. I think this album generally is quite ahead like of its time. Like, you know, all the songs are really well written, really well performed, excellent musicianship, and I think it's a consistently good album. You know, there's not really a bad track on here. Like, you know, like again, it's maybe a bit samey in terms of its sound, like in places. Like you maybe get a bit comfortable like in the album, you know, like sort of feeling like, well, this is the sound that Big Star like excel in, that's all like making. But it's still a hugely, it's still a great sound, like, you know, and it's this and like as I said, it was a hugely like influential record like as well. Compared to the debut #1 album, I would say this is every bit as good. I know that a lot of people do tend to prefer this album. I mean, I'd say they're level pegging, like, to like be honest like with you. You know, this one's a bit different. It's more, maybe got a bit more like a harder edge to it. You know, fewer slower like acoustic moments like on this album, which possibly makes this record seem a little bit more like one-dimensional. You know, like kind of like as I said, once you get into like the kind of like the sound of it, they don't really change it up a lot. But I think the quality of the songs though remains strong throughout the album, whether it be from the opener like Oh My Soul right through the track list, you know, and then like as I said, September Girls is one of the all-time greatest songs. So yeah, a very strong record here, like by Big Star, and yeah, one which is definitely yeah, hugely underappreciated, like even still. So yeah, that has been my review of Radio City's Big Star. I hope you have enjoyed. If you've got any requests for future reviews, please do leave them down below in the comments, and I'll see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.